Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we're the Youngs. We're glad you've joined us today. We have been doing a series called Investing in Your Marriage, making deposits in your marriage so that your marriage will be something wonderful, something amazing, and something special. We've talked so far about the idea of our roles and responsibilities based on Ephesians 5, husbands to love and lead, and a wife is to submit, follow, partner, respect.
Yes.
Each of us have unique responsibilities given to us by God. We're talking about Christian marriages, and the embrace. We ought to embrace those as from God.
Right.
Last week we started this. Really, it was part 3 of the series, but kind of a new section called relationships. Based on the truth that the Bible says that a man leaves father and mother, cleaves to his wife, and they two
are one.
They shall become one. They are one. So that's really about marriage relationship. The definition of marriage, the permanence of marriage. Marriage is one man, one woman for one life. That's the biblical definition of marriage. Sociologically, it's defined differently in our culture. But God's definition in the Bible, for those of us who are Christians, it's one man and one woman for one life. God intends a marriage to be permanent. We understand there's issues of divorce and all of that. But if you're married, God's plan is that you solve the problems, grow through problems, stay in love all the days of your life, and grow old together.
Absolutely.
Till death do us part is how we say it on our vows. And then we see the relationship side. They two shall be one is about relationship. And I started last week, for you that were listening last week, Bethany's dad, in a simple answer to the question, what do you think is the number one problem of the couples you've counseled or pastored? And he said dogmatically, most couples are not best friends. And I find that interesting because you would assume that, wouldn't you? You would just assume that, well, they're married, they're best friends. But it doesn't take you very long if you're around couples to know that's not necessarily a given.
True. And I think culturally, it's probably not a given.
Yeah, I think
you might be married, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a great relationship.
The culture is so different in our generation. And there's so many issues that we have to face that sometimes I think our forefathers didn't always have to face. The busyness of our culture, the bias of our culture against family and marriage and all of that. So let's review a little bit from last week. We talked about if I'm going to be best friends in my marriage, if we're going to be best friends, it is going to take love. And we talked that love is what you do, not what you feel. It includes feelings, and we love the feelings. One teenager years ago when I preached a sermon about love gave me a quote, love is a feeling you feel when you feel like you're going to have a feeling you've never felt before. And I have no idea what that means, and neither did she, but she thought it was pretty funny, and it was kind of funny. But love is based on what you do. You do things for each other. You do things together. We talked about that, dating, praying together, planning the future together, doing hobbies together, investing in your marriage is really what this is all about. Putting deposits into your marriage account that reaps great dividends in the years to come. And it's a great, great investment. We talked about it takes time. In the busyness of our culture, we're running madly through life. And it doesn't matter whether you're single or married, whether it's just the two of you or you have one kid or two kids or 10 kids. Life is crazy busy. Everybody is busy. And the odd thing is that there seemed to be a day when people retired and had time. Well, I preach in churches all over the country, and I'll joke with retired people about, wow, it must be nice to be retired. Like, oh my word, I don't have time for nothing. And a lot busier than I've ever been. And that really is kind of sad because one of the things that we have to have in order to be best friends is time. We have to invest in each other. We have to prioritize. We talked about that. And any other thought before we move on about love and time?
I was just thinking about the priority. It has to be a priority because, yes, we are all busy and we can all think of the next thing that we need to do. But at the very top of our list should be our relationship with our spouse.
Sure. And prioritizing that, maybe meaning writing it in your schedule.
Absolutely.
Your weekly date. Bethany and I'll talk about, like on our morning walk, we'll talk about, the day. What's the day? Or what do we need to do this week? And our weeks are always different because we may be in a revival campaign. We may be home instead of in a revival campaign. And so every week is, okay, how are we going to prioritize this week so that what's important to us is actually what gets done?
Yes.
And so talk about it. Sit with your spouse and plan. What could we do to have a closer relationship?
Right.
And start investing is the idea there. But as we continue to talk, there's a couple of the things we would point out to you. How can you, in your marriage, be best friends and have a closer relationship? Well, one of the things, Beth and I wanted to say to you is it's going to take loyalty. Loyalty is big.
Right.
Loyalty says, all right, we're going through a different phase in life, but you're number one to me.
Absolutely.
You're more important to me than what's going on right now.
Right.
In the Bible, there's the story of Hosea and Gomer, which is a very weird story. It's a story of a prophet, and God gave him a wife, and she was actually a prostitute.
Right.
And she eventually tires of her marriage to Hosea, and she goes into the life of prostitution until eventually she is completely destroyed. She's actually being sold into slavery. Human trafficking is obviously nothing new because it was back then as well. The fact is, though, that Hosea, Gomer's his wife.
Yes.
The fact is that Hosea was commanded by God to go purchase her. That's your wife. The picture of loyalty there is amazing. And actually, it is a spiritual illustration in the Bible of how much God loves us.
Absolutely.
That he's always loyal to us. He always cares about us. And if you're in a situation where you are not able to be loyal to your spouse, your marriage is in serious trouble.
Right.
If and whatever the reason being, it may be something as small as, you're having in-law troubles. And all of a sudden you're frustrated and you're not loyal to your spouse.
Right.
It's always unwise to go to your parents about your spouse and say negative things.
Right.
It always is, because it's a disloyalty. Loyalty's got to be known. Obviously we have issues. Obviously we have times where we don't see things eye to eye, or we get our feelings hurt, or some issues, kind of bothering us in our heart. But loyalty should be known. And in your marriage, if you're going to be best friends, you got to be loyal.
Absolutely.
Got to make it a major priority. Jesus even mentioned in his discussion of divorce and remarriage, the second time you find the phrase, for this cause a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, the first time is in Genesis, in creation, when Adam and Eve got married. Right. The second time is when the Pharisees were trying to attack Jesus and find a way to entangle his words in the issue of divorce and remarriage. And Jesus said that we should not divorce. And then he adds this, it's a problematic phrase that has been debated, discussed, and even fought over for a long time. And Jesus acknowledged, I think, disloyalty when he said, we should never, divorce is not wise, not good, not intended. And then he says something in the discussion about, except it be for fornication. Which is a really strange statement, but it tells us that the reason adultery is so wicked and so evil and so wrong is because it is disloyal to your spouse. Right. And I know we've already talked on our podcast some about purity in marriage and in life, but purity is important because it shows a loyalty. When a man says, I don't have eyes for this other woman, I don't have eyes for her. Right. She didn't even cross my mind because I am loyal to my spouse. Right. That's vital. And so any other thought about loyalty before we move to this next thought?
Well, we certainly need to show loyalty in those areas of purity and in faithfulness to our marriage vows, and certainly have no thoughts about others. But I would say that loyalty even shows up in just everyday life, because, we're around couples all the time, and we can even fall into it, where you're busy, you're having an irritating day, things are not going well, and you just start kind of snapping at each other or being snarky with each other. Or sometimes you have a little hurt in your heart over something and you haven't talked about it yet. If you want to talk about, or you want to listen to our podcast on communication, that's earlier in our podcast series, but you haven't talked about it yet. You just got a little hurt in your heart. And so maybe some teasing starts around the dinner table. And all of a sudden that teasing gets mean.
It becomes deeply personal.
It does. It becomes very personal. And all of a sudden, everybody around the dinner table knows, I think someone has an issue over there.
One of our kids would say, awkward.
And so loyalty is even just in those everyday little times where, you know what, my relationship with you, my best friendship with you is bigger than the hurt I have in my heart, and I will not say that snarky comment to you. Or even if you're in with your friends, you're having a big couples night out, everybody's going, it's your connection class, whatever, and the girls start talking, oh, my husband, he does this, and oh, whatever, and you don't join in. No, because you are loyal to that man. Even if he doesn't pick up his socks and put them in the dirty clothes, and he leaves them right next to the dirty clothes basket. I know that David never would do that.
Ever.
But, all the things that girls can talk about, wives, when they get together, don't join in. Don't be snide and snarky about your husband. Be loyal.
Yeah, because your words do affect your heart.
They do.
And even sometimes what is said in humor or a sighing and rolling of the eyes, it puts a negativity in the heart.
It does.
And that's a disloyalty. I was even thinking, just as you were talking there, about one of the things that people comment on frequently in our marriage is that when I'm preaching and Bethany's in the audience, she's engaged. Mm-hmm. She's very loyal to my preaching in the sense that sometimes it's not sometimes, oftentimes she hears a sermon repeated. Mm-hmm. A sermon series I will do for a set amount of time in churches where I've not been before. So I can preach a series. I'm working through a series, or I'm there for a family conference. She's heard all these sermons on the family. Mm-hmm. Even a joke or a story, but people, I'm always aware when I tell a joke, it's funny to me how often people will look at my wife. They'll look at Bethany and they look at you because they're wanting to know, what does she think about this?
Awkward.
And, but it's also true that people are very aware that Bethany is very loyal to me. Mm-hmm. They're very aware of that. Mm-hmm. And I work at that publicly when I travel without Bethany of mentioning her,
right? Of
commenting on her. I remember a preacher I heard some years ago that every time he prayed before he preached, he prayed for his wife and children who were not able to be with him. And loyalty is verbal, and it's purity. It's saying it. It's showing it. It's standing for it. So if we're going to be best friends in our marriage, it's going to take love. It's going to take time. It's going to take loyalty. And then Bethany and I also want to point out to you, it's going to take growing. And here's an important matter. Marriages are not static.
No.
And neither are we. We're always changing, growing.
Right.
In a sense, you could even say that there's some ways this is true, that the person you married is not the person you married. They should be growing. They should be older, wiser, stronger, more mature. They should know more now. We've got to continually be growing. And we have to grow in so many areas to be best friends. We have to grow through problems. Right. Problems come to marriages.
Yes.
And we have to. I remember, and I'm sure I've told this before, but I heard a couple say, a guy said to me one night, he said, we've been married for 19 years and have never had a cross word with each other. And I laughed and I said, well, why aren't you guys living together? Because, are you kidding me? Either somebody's dead in that marriage or
somebody's lying.
Or somebody's lying. Are you kidding me? Or somebody is very, 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 very spiritual. I guess we could go there.
Maybe.
But we do have to grow together. And don't be afraid of that. You should always be growing in your marriage because problems are going to come.
Right.
And you have to pray about them. You have to obey the Bible. We have to learn. And we've mentioned this in other podcasts, but it's worth repeating here. We have to learn to speak softly. Mm-hmm. We have to listen and understand each other. Mm-hmm. We even have to give each other time to work through our emotions.
Right.
There's some couples I know that we want it resolved right now. I want this over right now. But when it comes to emotional issues in our heart, sometimes we are okay, but we have to literally get ourselves back into the right frame of mind, which is why, like David said in Psalm 51 and verse 10, when he was praying about getting right with God, he said, he prays, create in me a clean heart. He wants a clean heart, but he also prays, renew a right spirit within me.
Yes.
And it takes time to renew a right spirit. So we have to grow together through that.
Yes.
So through problems. And here's a big one. You that are married, if you're going to be best friends, you have to grow to meet each other's needs in every phase of life. Mm-hmm. And goodness, for all of you that are listening to this podcast, the phases of life would be probably almost hysterical if we could know all of them. Some of you are newlyweds, and although you're madly in love, you're finding out things about her that you didn't know till you got married and moved in together.
True.
And you're finding out things about him that you just were shocked. You didn't know that about him until now that you lived with him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
So newlywed, that's a time of growing together. Instead of allowing that to become a negative, to we're like, oh my word.
Right.
It's a time of growing.
And you don't fall prey to the lie that you can tell each other or tell yourself. We don't have kids yet. We're always together. We don't need to go on a date, or we don't need to sit down and talk to each other on the couch. We can actually just sit down and watch Netflix all evening instead of connecting. So don't believe that lie. You still need to date
all the time. That's really good. And it's so true. So we grow together in every phase of life. This is and then some of you are going through the pregnancy stage to where your spouse is pregnant, and that's an exciting time.
First baby. Mm-hmm.
Going to have that first baby, but you had no idea that when she's pregnant, it was going to change her.
That she was going to cry every day.
Or she's going to be sick or
tired.
Or she's going to, have emotions all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are things that sometimes become very negative in a marriage. But those are phases of life, and if we grow together through those phases, it increases our best friend relationship.
Right.
So instead of a husband being, oh my word, she wants fresh fries from McDonald's again, go buy them. It says I love you, and you're going to have my baby, our baby.
Buy 2 of them and sit down and eat them with her.
Yes, and both of you can add weight, and you can be pregnant right along with her.
Oh my goodness.
So there's newlywed, there's pregnancy, then there's the children stage. Mm-hmm. Boy, that's a stage, because children are demanding. They just move into your life and stay.
Yes.
And they take a lot of time, but I've got to be aware of the fact that Bethany and I are more important than our children.
Right.
And we love the children. We focus on the children. There's no way around it. You can't be a parent without investing copious amounts of time and energy.
Right. Yes.
And all of that. And some of you are at the grandparenting stage. And that's a new stage of life. But
that would be something I would like to be in.
It would, yes. And if our married children are listening to this, there's no pressure here. And
none at all.
But we have been praying fervently for grandchildren.
Oh my.
They will love that. And but that's a new stage of life. And even things like menopause. Some of you ladies are starting through that stage of life. That's a new stage of life. You husbands that are listening, that's a new stage of life. And we've got to grow together to be best friends even during those times.
I even heard one lady, when I first started into this stage of life, I was talking to all kinds of older women. Just tell me your wisdom, tell me what I should be doing. And maybe we'll do a whole podcast on it, because it's not something that's talked about a lot. But I remember one lady told me, she was like, well, just make sure you're sweet when you're out and about, and then just let everything out when you're home, because those people love you anyway, and it doesn't matter. And I thought to myself, that was not good advice.
It would be better to do that one the other way if you're going to handle it that way.
I guess so. But just remembering to grow with your relationship and your husband, even if you feel like you have instant irritation in your heart over nothing. And really, girls, if we sit back and think about it, it's over nothing. But yeah, that instant irritation.
I didn't say that, just for the record there. I didn't say that at all. That was my wife.
The instant irritation and all the fluctuating emotions that come with menopause, you have to grow with your husband. One of the things that helped me during this time is, it took us probably a couple of months to figure out what in the world has she totally lost her mind.
What is going on?
Once we figured it out, we went on a date and we were talking about it, and we were talking about different directions and things we should do. But one of the things that helped me incredibly was that David just leaned across the table and he took my hand and he said, hey, we're in this together. I am here for you. And it was wonderful. I needed it.
And it's true.
And we're still best friends.
And we are. I did read, even a friend of mine gave me an article for you men and said it'll help you if you're going through that menopause time of life to remember how that word is put together. It's men of pause. And it means you have to slow down. And she's going to ask you, off the wall questions about, do I look old?
Have I gained weight?
Have I gained weight? And you pause and seek God for great wisdom about how you answer those. But more than that, it's a matter of pausing and praying, and pausing and loving, slowing down to connect. These are different stages of life. And
Mm-hmm.
And, even I know some guys really go through a really tough time at midlife crisis. The idea of, is my life counting?
Right.
Is my life making any difference at all? Have I wasted these first few years? Should I even be doing this job? And they start thinking about, I'm getting older and I don't feel quite as good as I used to, and things are not as easy for me to do as they once were. But to love each other through that time builds your relationship into something very special, to be very loyal, to be very encouraging. Job challenges are going to come. Grow through them. Health challenges are going to come.
Yes.
Grow through them. There's something amazing. Our society always honors a couple who stays together in the sacrificial times.
Right.
Where he is sacrificing to meet her needs because she can't do things for her health reasons.
Right.
Maybe there's nothing she can do for him, so he serves her or she serves him.
Right.
This is about growing together. And you that are older, if you're older and you're listening to our podcast, you should be best friends in your elder years too. Right. Elderly years. You should love each other.
Right.
And sometimes older couples say, well, we're together all the time. Newlyweds will do that. We're together all the time, so we're fine. But older couples will do that too. We're together all the time, so we're fine. But there's something special about doing things together on purpose just for an investment in your marriage.
Right.
When you're sitting and watching CNN every day, you're not in CNN. No. You're not investing in your marriage. No. You're just going, wasting time.
Right.
Quite frankly.
Yes.
But when you're dating or when you're exercising together, or you're taking a trip together.
Right. My parents, after my daddy retired, they didn't have a great deal of time together before my daddy passed away. But those few years that they had during his retirement were very sweet. And often they would tell me that, we just got back from a drive. That was their thing. They just wanted to go for a drive in the country, and they would drive and drive and drive. Sometimes they'd end up 2 hours away and find a restaurant and eat and then drive 2 hours back. But that was their time. They just loved it.
For them. They loved those memories. That's so true. So we got to grow. And I just, would ask you, are you growing together? Wherever you are right now in the stage of your life, are you growing? Is your marriage better, stronger?
Could you say that you're growing together in towards each other instead of growing outwards from each other?
That's really good. So we got to grow towards each other.
Right.
And we got to grow to laugh together.
Absolutely.
Life is brutal sometimes.
Yes.
And frustrating and
lots
irritating.
Of challenges.
Learn to laugh.
Yes.
Laugh at the little idiosyncrasies and silliness of life. Don't make little things a big deal. Laugh at them. And if your spouse is not in a laughing mood at the time, be wise about that.
Especially during menopause.
But laugh together. Find things to chuckle. The Bible says in Proverbs 17:22 that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine.
Right.
It's a broken spirit, it says, dries the bones. And in other words, if there's frustrations and irritings, it actually affects me physically.
Absolutely.
But if things are well and I can laugh and smile and enjoy life,
right,
that's absolutely vital. We have just a couple of moments here. Let's mention one more thing. We do need to love. We do need time. This is all about being best friends, having a strong marriage relationship. We got to grow.
Yes.
But one more thing that I would like to point out is in this idea of growing, is that we have to grow to the place where we turn our spouse's uniqueness into endearments.
Yes.
Uniqueness. Every one of us are unique.
Yes.
And after we've been married for a while, the uniqueness of each other can become irritations. They can become real negative.
Yes.
And maybe it is negative. Maybe maybe it is negative that he doesn't do well of handling his own laundry or putting dirty clothes in the dirty clothes hamper or whatever it may be. But if I'm not careful, a negative can become such an irritation that we are no longer close. But I wanted to close this section by saying to you that we married each other for the things we love. Right. Stay focused on those things. No matter how many negatives there may be in a person's life, there will be many things you love about them. And by focusing on that, it turns the negative into something positive. And what you've got to do is you've got to stay positive by turning negatives, the negative things, the uniqueness into sweetness. Don't become roll your eyes and sigh at your spouse. Oh, my word. Mm-hmm. Frustrated or irritated or always bothered that he does that or she does that. Mm-hmm. Be sweet about it.
Right.
And one of our friends said one day in a session, I heard him speak on marriage and family, and he said, our spouse's faults are simply arrows pointing towards needs that we are called of God to meet. So I'm to serve Bethany, and she's to serve me, and I'm to love her, and she's to love me, and we're to put up with each other's negative things along the way, but do it in such a way that we're very sweet, and our marriage becomes very strong.
Right.
There are few things more wonderful than being best friends in a marriage.
Absolutely.
And someday we're going to be old. We're the youngs. So it'll be hard for us to get there because we will always be young.
Always, forever.
Always, forever young. But as we get older, we want to be close, and I hope you do as well. Mm-hmm. And so any other further thoughts before we close this session today?
Well, it's always great to have a quirky best friend. So if your quirky best friend is your spouse, that's even greater.
I'll give you more to laugh at.
Yes.
That's absolutely right. Well, this is Keeping It Young. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, and we'll look forward to being with you next time.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production. All rights reserved.